Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Hugh and I work for Sport New Zealand, and it is great to have you here as part of this short video presentation. Three things that I'd like to cover off on in the next 15 minutes. Number one is to provide a brief outline of New Zealand's wider sports system. Number two is to focus on the support framework wrapped around coaches. And number three is to share learnings from the sports sector that may or may not be relevant to Action Network Facilitation. Now, I believe I bring two things to this session. One is I'm external and two is I'm impartial. So please, I encourage you to reflect on the comments that I'll share and make your own meaning. As an example, when I start to talk about New Zealand's wider sports system, it'd be great if you could reflect on your own organisation and where it sits in the wider farming system. For example, where does MPI fit? Where does dairy and Z? Where does beef and lamb fit? And then when I start to look at the support framework wrapped around our coaches, again, ask yourself, where does your support come from and where does your role fit within a wider system? Very briefly, I'd like to touch on several experiences that I've had that I believe are relevant to today. Now, the deeper meaning may not come out till next week in the 90 minutes, but it gives you a snapshot around where my comments may be positioned. I was a university lecturer for a number of years in a sport coaching degree and a physical education degree. I'm currently a sport development consultant for Sport New Zealand. I work for World Rugby up in the Pacific and Asia, and that can be quite varied. Sometimes it's working directly with athletes, but more often than not, it's working with their coaches or their system leaders up there. I have a number of years coaching experience, probably about 25, and again that's very varied, everything from coaching my own children through to youth, through to adults, through to senior representative rugby, and 3 years with Manu Samoa. And what that looked like is the players coming in from around the world, they're all professional players, gathered together and very quickly built into a team to play a number of test matches at a couple of periods throughout the year. And that role finished with them in the 2015 World Cup. And last but not least, I'm a farmer at heart. So my brother and I own a beef farm up in Hawke's Bay. And for the last 20 years, we've done a lot of experimenting on that place, a lot of trial and error. We've had everything from our own capital ewes to bulls, leasing it out for a short period of time, maize contracts on it, and at the moment we've got Angus cattle. But the point I'd like to make there is I don't understand your Action Network facilitation work super well, but I do get a bit of a sense of some of the people that you may well be working with, and that's the farmers. And rest assured, if I had someone on here as a skilled facilitator who had worked with us over the last 20 years or any part of that time, and I guarantee our business will be looking far different than what it is today. To give you a quick snapshot of the context that I work in, this week 2.5 million people in this country, that's adults, will participate in sport and recreation in to some degree. So I suspect there's people on this call who are part of those statistics. Each year in this country, 1 million adults will volunteer to give up their time for sport and recreation in this country. Again, I suspect there's people on that call who are part of those statistics. And finally, every week in this country, we'll have thousands of athletes and participants at all levels who are engaged in sport and recreation. So these people fit in a system somewhere. To give you a brief overview of our wider sport system, here it is here. We've got the government, and every government has a certain leaning, or every government has a certain area of interest. Sport, for all governments, is one of those. Sport New Zealand is a government entity, so part of our role is to keep close to the government and what outcomes they're looking to achieve. So we set strategy, and once strategy is set, we invest, lead and enable organisations. So to give you an example, we will invest into national partners, and New Zealand Rugby and New Zealand Netball are a couple of those. And so once the funding levels are set, over a 3-month period of time around the strategy is released, you'll have these ongoing conversations to determine and clarify with them what is the work that they're going to do that aligns to strategy. Essentially, where does our money go and what are we buying? And then they have a role as a national organisation, and that feeds down and around leading and supporting the regions, and then the regions in turn support the club systems. Our next line of investment is into regional sports trusts. So I've given you two examples, Sport Canterbury and Sport Southland. Again, once the funding levels are set, then you have this ongoing conversation over 3 months, getting clear with them around what is it that they're going to do and how that relates closely to strategy. That's a snapshot of our wider system and some of the alignment that you may get a sense of. I'm going to now narrow in on our coach development system, and that's part of our sporting world that we invest into. So we talk about 3 levels, 3 layers. We've got our athletes, our coaches, our coach developers, and our trainers. So as a really quick snapshot, if I asked, well, myself, what do athletes do? They'll do things like they train, play, recover, review, and perform. And so about now, hopefully you're starting to ask yourself, well, where do your farmers fit? Are they the athletes? And then what skills do they bring to your environment that you work in? And then the next level is, or layer, is our coaches. So in our world, that's just an example, they will motivate, inspire, plan and review, lead team culture, manage a coaching team, bring in expertise when they need to, build relationships. And so about now, hopefully you're looking at your role and thinking, well, am I a coach? Maybe call something different, but what skills do I bring to the table? One of the things I've found really interesting over my years is that coaches will often think their added value is all around the technical and tactical knowledge of the game. And I challenge that with them, because I'd argue that if they think their added value is technical and tactical knowledge, then they've already lost. Now, I don't mean that in winning and losing games, but the athletes that they work with, at a flick of a button, can get access to expertise from anywhere around the world around the technical and tactical knowledge of the game. You only got to go online and you'll see it all over the place. So I really encourage the coaches to think, what is your added value? Now, if it's around relationship building, creating an environment that these athletes want to come to and grow in, creating an environment that gets the best out of the individuals and best out of the team collectively, and really create an inspiring environment. Now, those skills are harder to access online. You get plenty of people tell you what they look like, but this stuff is lived with the coaching and athlete relationship. The next tier, 2 tiers, is where we've had a lot of shift in recent years. Now, we've got this group called the coach developers, and they've always existed, albeit under different titles. But what we've made a more concerted effort is to focus on empowering them up and being clear around what their role looks like. So, for example, they'll do things like develop the skills of the coaches, facilitate learning, observe and mentor, provide feedback, build relationships. Ironically, when I used to go in and see coach developers in action, and they'd go along to a training session and watch a coach, one of the first things that happens, the coach steps aside and the coach developer jumps in and starts coaching the athletes. And my comment to the coaches, to the coach developer at the end of the session is, tell me what you know about the coach. In short, they know nothing. Why? Because they were the ones coaching the session. They weren't the ones observing the coaches and within a quest to build up and power up the coaches. So we've done a lot of work, and what that's looked like, we've had national residentials, we've had mentoring alongside these people, and as the capability and capacity of coach developers increased, the national organisations start to drop in their own coach development programs. The regional organisations start to power up their own coach developers. And I think crucially, part of the success of that is tied to investment to some degree within that wider framework that I've just outlined. And then in 2017, we realised that there's this group of people who may not have had the support and the development within our system, and we call those people trainers. Now, they tend to be system leaders, they tend to lead organisations, they tend to mentor and observe the coach developers, they tend to manage change, they tend to influence the system, they tend to strategic plan. So we've had a more concerted effort. We've had 3D prototypes around that over the last few years, but that's been really interesting. Now, we're pretty strong on what capability of these people, these groups of people look like, and it's not a dump of information. A lot of it's around co-constructing, co-designing, reflective practice, action learning, contextualized support from people like myself out to the side. So that gives you a snapshot of the coach development system, which fits within a wider system that I shared earlier on. One of the things, if we're after at athletes level, is remembering these athletes can walk any week. You know, most of them, they're there because they want to, and they can walk because they want to. So if it's about providing quality opportunities, quality experiences, and quality support for athletes, I'd also argue it's about providing quality experiences, opportunities, support for coaches, because many of those coaches are there purely because they want to. And so it's about fueling that. And then I go to the next two levels. It's the same with the coach developers and trainers, providing quality opportunities, experiences and support for them. Now, most of those coach developers and trainers are in paid position, but many of them are contracted, and many of them, or a number of them, are volunteers. So again, we can assume that they're there because they have to be, but in essence, they don't. So quality opportunities, experiences and support at all levels. If I was to reflect on a few musings at the end here, they would be these. Getting alignment in the wider system is vital. So in our world, we have a number of sporting organisations, and we could all be fighting the system and heading off in different directions, but it's about trying to align to something that's greater than one organisation, and our strategy tends to be that guiding light. Daniel Kim talks around mental models. So that's your deepest attitudes, values and beliefs towards any topic, towards raising your children, towards being a coach, be a facilitator, whatever it may be. So we're pretty clear in our sport development team around what our mental models are towards certain things, such as capability build and capacity build in our system. The next thing is aligning systems to those mental models. Now, ironically, I reckon 95% of the organisations I've been to over the last number of years, they will tell me very clearly what their mental models are. As an example, it'll be something like, we believe in powered up employees, we believe in inspiring the employees and creating an environment they want to be part of. We believe that they have ownership of their decisions, and we create a culture that they enjoy and want to grow in. And you look at the systems and they're everything but that. They are micromanaging, they are depowering, they are very top heavy, pushing down information. And so I just be honest with organisations, you're better off to either shift your mental models and to say, actually, we've got systems that align to these mental models, and it is about being top heavy, it is about being very direct, prescriptive and micromanaging. And I'm saying the systems work perfectly. Or you shift the systems that truly look like enabling people to be empowered, to be motivated, to be inspired, to be part of something greater than themselves. So that's Daniel Kim's work. Be crystal clear on the role. So in any given week, I mentioned 4 roles. A person and people on this call, you may be an athlete one day, you may be a coach that night, you may be a coach developer tomorrow, and in another role you're a trainer. So it's knowing which role you play and being in that role very skillfully. Sometimes people confuse the two and play different roles, which is not always helpful. When working with groups of people, determine the drivers that get people there in the first place, understand why they're going to commit, and then fuel those drivers. So I suspect the people you work with, the farmers, just like our athletes and coaches, can walk any week. If the experience is not great, the quality is not there, they'll walk, and they can. So fuel the drivers that get them there, and enable them to want to be part of something better. I really encourage you to help you and the people around you understand the value that your role plays in the system. So to give you an example, the Silver Ferns World Champs last year, now probably only 2 or 3 coaches who had a direct influence on that World Championship with those players, but Netball New Zealand would probably be the first to admit that the World Cup was won years ago by all the effort of their volunteers in powering up and inspiring those what were powerful athletes at that World Championship 10 years ago, when they were coming through the system and they were developing as young women. So it's understanding your role in a wider system, and you'll have a really important cog to play in the greater farming system. Really encourage you to understand the value that you bring. So I gave the example around the technical and tactical. If that's I use the word only thing you bring, then it's probably not enough. But if you start looking at the added value, as I mentioned, about creating the culture, fueling the drivers that farmers want to be in there with, creating an environment they can learn and facilitate, that's the environment, that'll be the added value and the stuff that they love. I use the term make obvious the obvious. So sometimes the athletes look at a coach and they say, that's a great coach, but they may not be aware of all of the many things that the coach is doing. So I really encourage you to make obvious the things that you do to create this great learning environment. Now, I don't mean you stand up and say, whoa, I'm great at this and this is what I'm doing. But if you're doing things like individual plans with farmers, you may well say, doing an individual plan because that enables me to best support you and get the best out of you. So I need your help around that. You're making obvious why you're doing it. Or we're going to spend the first session really unpacking the drivers behind why we're here individually and collectively and what you're looking to get out of this program. And we want to create an environment where it's open and people can share and build relationships. And we're doing that because we want to build this team, and a team that's going to be long lasting. Again, making obvious the obvious. And the final thing is, at a micro level, when working with teams, I see there's real value in spending time establishing the team, spending time building the team, and spending time growing the team. And I often believe if that happens, then the goal is laid. So if that team only requires learning or gets learning when I'm there, then I'm probably not doing my job. So great looks like all the things that happen when I'm not around. So there's a few musings to finish with, team. I hope you've got at least one thing out of this session. And for those of you who are around next Friday at 9 o'clock, I look forward to delving in a little bit deeper and answering some of your questions if I can. Thanks for your time.